I'm with David Cormack and Jane Patterson. Interesting watching those two in succession, wasn't it? And David, you had a thought about the continuation.
Yeah, well, this is looking very likely like it's just the 20th year of the Clark government. You know, we saw Jacinda Ardern say she's going to be a Prime Minister for all New Zealanders. Well, that means that we're going to see the same centrist boringness that we have done for the past 3 years. And I guess it makes sense, you know, they've won an outright majority, so obviously that's what New Zealanders by the majority like. But it leaves behind, you know, large chunks of society. And I just think that's a real shame.
Yeah, I mean, Jane, you and I both were nodding our heads because we remember, we might have even been in the same studio at the time, John Key said exactly the same thing in 2014, I'm going to govern for all New Zealanders. And everyone cheers, but what it does mean is that those at either end of it, the activists don't like it, do they? Because they don't get the transformation.
It's not just activists, though. Sorry, because I'm feeling implied that I'm the activist here, and it's people that see, you know, parts of society, people being left behind, that we don't want to have left behind. And sure, a majority is great, but there are so many people who are living below the poverty line, and I just would love to see a government actually give a damn about them and do something about it. Sorry to cut you off, Jane.
No, that's okay. I think too, when you look at the global context, when you look at what's happening in the United States, you know, the message there was don't let these politics rip us apart. And that was, I think, very much part of John Key's pitch at the time. So we're going to have to wait to see how fast, how progressive this Labour government's going to be. But I think her message tonight was, you know, we need to stick together. Don't let politics be so tribal. It's been a pretty tough campaign. So I think this was about soothing feelings a little bit. But obviously Labour in a very, very strong position. And I think that's obviously a huge advantage. But one problem for them is they really have a lack of talent through that top team. They've got a good 6 or 7 performers, but when you have to stack a whole executive, and it's not just the cabinet, it's the whole ministry, and maybe that's where they will look to the Greens. They've got ministers who have been experienced in very specific areas like climate change, so that might be one advantage that the Greens does bring, to be able to bring a little bit of depth and breadth to that cabinet.
They could still have a Labour cabinet, and with some Green ministers outside cabinet might give them a bit more freedom from cabinet collective responsibility, and it might allow them to take some of those technical portfolios like climate change that James Shaw had.
It's not a technical portfolio, it's an existential crisis for
I'm not going to get into that now. I was talking about...
and a nod to the progressive nature too. If you want to, speak to that centrist audience, and we've seen in New Zealand, they don't like it when parties go too far to the left, too far to the right, and of course that's a massive balance. So maybe having the Greens in one of those portfolios is an indication that they are willing to take more of a faster, further approach on areas like that, which of course is very close to Jacinda Ardern's own position anyway, and look like they are giving a nod to that other side.
Yeah, one of the other big stories of the night that we haven't been concentrating a lot on is the very likely return of the Māori Party. If you look at Wairiki with nearly 92% of the vote counted, Rawiri Waititi is ahead of Tamati Coffee there, and they would be back in Parliament. Just looking at their party vote, they're around 1%, probably not enough to nudge another MP. I think you need 1.2, 1.3% of the party vote, and maybe even higher to get another MP in on the list. There are the numbers there for those of you watching on television. This has been bouncing around most of the night, but the Māori Party candidate pretty comfortably ahead now with most of that vote counted. This is a big deal.
It is a big deal, and of course at the last election the Māori Party were unceremoniously turfed out of Parliament, and a lot of Māoridom was actually surprised that it happened. There was supposed to be a bit of a protest vote, and it ended up with the party out of Parliament altogether. So if we do see Rawiri Waititi come back, it's one seat, but it's an incredibly important seat because this party has reformed, they've rebuilt during this term, so having even one seat gives them a platform, it gives them a voice in Parliament, and just that extra attention on Māori issues and that Māori perspective, and of course the resources that come with that seat, it means that they can develop further. They'll be looking to 2023 if they secure this seat.
Māori expectations are going to be very high too from this government, aren't they? They've backed Labour largely, and they're going to see a Labour Party with real power, and expectations will follow.
Yeah, absolutely, and I really hope that Labour step up and deliver for Māori. I think it's wonderful the Māori Party's back in Parliament. I think they've been a lost voice for the last term, and so I'm really pleased to see them back, and so I really hope Labour acknowledges the support that it's had from Māoridom and actually goes to work for them.
And a shot across the bow too for those Labour Māori MPs. If you remember, in 2017, they came off the list. They said to the Māori voters, if you want us, you have to vote for us in the electorate seat. Now, they bailed on that strategy this time. They went back on the list, so they absolutely had a backstop. But I think losing the seat, that is a signal that there are those expectations, and not just on the Labour Party, but on that Māori caucus. There was a lot of criticism last term that they basically did what they were told, that being part of a mainstream party, they were not progressing Māori issues as aggressively as they should be.
Absolutely one to watch.